My wife slept with another man for money. The lover's wife found out and left her in a wheelchair. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know where our community is growing. I grew up just a step above poverty, and I think that helped me develop a very sensible appreciation for money. I don't think everyone needs to be raised in a deprived home to understand its importance, but in my case I couldn't choose, and I can say it helped me. I can't say the same for the woman I married. Over the years, I've done everything possible for her to value money and know how to spend it with common sense. I'm not saying you should put 90% of your income into a savings account, but I think you shouldn't try to burn through the entire paycheck without worrying about the more important things that money could be used for. I, a 30-year-old man, have tried, but nothing has changed much. My wife, Marion, 31, has always been bad with money and still is. I've tried to sit down with her and teach her like a professor. I try to lead by example. I've tried to incentivize her saving. Nothing has worked. She simply spends her money as if it had no end. And when she runs out of money 2/3 of the way through the month, she starts looking for me to bail her out or buy her the unnecessary things she so desires. I'm not here to complain about a wife who spends money like a teenager. I'm here to talk about how that poor financial discipline seems to be the reason why I've been cheated on. She cheated on me for money, and I can only blame myself. I saw she wasn't the best with finances when we started dating, and I tried hard to get her to spend more sensibly. Back then, I made a little progress and let that fool me, thinking I'd be able to make her move forward even more. I thought all she needed was time. I've had my time, and she hasn't improved. On the 19th of the month, she told me she'd run out of money. I said that was fine because I'd fill her car with gas, and she could use my account to order food or whatever she wanted to eat. I try by all means not to give her cash or my cards because she's not sensible enough with her spending for me to trust her in that aspect. I had her put gas a few times, and I saw her ordering food while at work. But by the 24th of the month, she wasn't ordering food anymore. She didn't ask me for gas money either. And then, when she came in with a box containing a new handbag, I had to ask her where she was getting the money. She's not a good liar. When she told me she'd found some money she had saved somewhere, that she'd suddenly remembered, I knew she was feeding me bullshit. If she'd had the sense to save that money in the first place, I don't think her first instinct would be to use it to buy a handbag, especially when she was getting money from me for her food and gas. She should have used it to make ends meet. Maybe I'm giving her too much credit. I asked her where she'd saved it, and she just mumbled it was in some financial app. She quickly changed the subject and started raving about the handbag she'd bought. I didn't say anything else because I didn't want to seem envious, but I knew something was going on and she didn't want me to find out. Unfortunately, the first thing that came to my mind was that she was cheating on me. I love Marion, but the problem with her is I know all her flaws. I love her very much, but I'll never say we've had a perfect marriage or that we're the ideal couple. There are so many things I'd improve about her if I had the chance, and one of them is that she constantly tries to cover her tracks, even if that means telling a horrible lie. She dodges accountability, and I can only blame myself for not being stricter with my criteria. Despite everything, I love her and I do, which is why we're married. So when she told me she'd simply stumbled upon the money, it didn't convince me at all. I knew I'd have to find out the truth on my own, so I didn't bother arguing with her. I decided I'd check her phone when I had a good opportunity. That opportunity came when she fell asleep 2 days later. She'd neatly left her phone by her pillow instead of falling asleep using it as she did most days. I didn't hesitate to take it. It wouldn't be the first time I checked her phone, so I didn't even waver at the opportunity. I had to scroll through many of the conversations she had in her messaging app, but it didn't take long to see Ryan. I didn't know the guy, but she seemed to know him very well. They'd been chatting for ages. And the moment I opened their messages, I could see there was a strongly sexual tone to their conversations. In fact, from the very beginning, everything was sexual. From what I could see, the relationship had started with those purposes. They weren't people who were together because they genuinely loved spending time with each other. She wasn't in love with him or anything like that, and he didn't even seem to be in love with her. It was like a business transaction, and that became even more evident by the way she'd ask him for money or favors. From what I saw, They'd meet 2 or 3 times, and she'd casually throw in a request for a few $100s or send him a link to something she really wanted. They'd been like this for about 2 months at that point, so it wasn't even a long-term thing. I still blame myself for having been completely blind to that. If it weren't for the money issue recently, it's likely I'd still be in the dark. And yes, I could see she asked him for money on the 22nd. So that was probably why she didn't need to rely on me during the following days. She'd gotten money from her sugar daddy. I hate that word, and he doesn't even fit the profile because he doesn't seem much older than either of us. I don't know if there's anything else behind it, but it seems like an arrangement exclusively for financial benefit. For some reason, that makes things worse for me. It makes me feel I'm married to an escort or a prostitute, because what's the difference between her and people who give their body for money? There's no difference. That's the truth. I've read so many stories of people being cheated on, but they never tell you how much it can truly destroy you inside. It hurts me immensely, and that's despite me not even being in the kind of marriage one feels came down from heaven. There are people who are in perfect unions and madly in love, and still they're cheated on. I wonder how hard it hits them, because I can't imagine it hurts more than it's hurting me right now. I wouldn't have had to go through this if she'd simply chosen to be a respectable woman. Her family's well off, and she grew up in those conditions. It's hard for me to understand why she's so powerless with money. It just doesn't make sense to me. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm going to have to end the marriage. So I probably should stop asking myself useless questions and just try to get things done. It's going to be a divorce. It's funny because I have very little idea how divorces work, but I guess there's always a first time to learn anything. Update 1. This update comes much later than I would have liked, and I know many people will have already moved on from my story, but that's okay. For the sake of completing the narrative, I want to make sure to document the whole story. So here I am to tell you what happened when I finally decided to confront Marion, my ex-wife. I had to research many things about the divorce process, but fortunately that was much easier because the family lawyer I got was very patient and kind. He was able to guide me through the whole process. He let me know that even with the evidence I had of her infidelity, I wouldn't be able to leave her with nothing. She would end up coming out of the marriage with an equitable division of everything we had earned. He said it didn't matter that she had squandered her own money. She would end up taking half of mine, and there really wasn't a good way to avoid it. It took me time, but I ended up accepting it. That's how the system works. Once I assimilated that, it was time to confront her. I told her we needed to talk about money. She made a face wanting to be in any other conversation but that one, but I warned her this time was different from the previous ones, so she really needed to pay attention. She straightened up and waited to hear what else I had to say. I told her I'd done everything possible for her to be financially responsible. She wasn't a child. She was old enough to manage money with common sense, but it didn't seem I was able to get her to do it. She kept wanting to spend on silly things, acting as if her money had no end. I told her she seemed to adore money. If it weren't so, she would have been more normal about it. She wouldn't have been the kind of person who cheats on her husband, because she looked for people to give her money. She cocked her head curiously when I said that, and I clarified she hadn't misheard me. I told her I knew about Ryan and that I was aware of everything that had been going on between them. I asked her if she had anything to say in her defense. She waited too long before asking, "Who's Ryan?" I told her she was stupid for asking that, and that I was going to get angry if she kept acting like I was hallucinating. I let her know I'd seen the text messages, so she didn't need to keep pretending she was a faithful wife. I knew she was unfaithful and that she'd slept with the guy on multiple occasions. So there was no doubt. I told her our marriage was over no matter what, so it was best she admitted the truth. She looked like she was trying to hold back tears. She managed to say with difficulty, asking me if I'd let her explain before ending things. I gave her the opportunity because I wanted to know what she had to tell me. It's not what it looks like. Yes, I've been receiving money from the guy, but we haven't slept together. I've just been leading him on to get money from him. It's really not as bad as you think. I promise you. I told her it didn't matter. It was still bad enough. Even if I accepted that as the truth, how was it better to say she was being extremely inappropriate with a man for money? But what if they never slept together? It was fine and not worth us getting divorced. She had nothing to say, just said she was trying to clarify things. The point is I still don't believe her. I have no reason to believe her in that aspect. I told her I'd already spoken to a divorce lawyer, and she opened her mouth in astonishment. She asked me why I hadn't even tried to listen to her side before going that far. My response was that the messages gave me enough explanation. There really wasn't any benefit of the doubt I could give her after what I saw in those texts. The most generous explanation on her part would still leave her looking bad. I told her my decision was made. She knew perfectly well she'd messed up, so there was no point in her trying to make me change my mind. She asked me if that was really all, and the only thing I could do was shrug and tell her she'd been the one who led us to that point. I'd done my part as a husband, and no matter how many problems we had during the marriage, I never left. I stayed hoping things would get better. I was a person who knew how to forgive, but some things are too much, and that was one of the things I simply wasn't going to tolerate. She was holding back tears, but simply nodded and told me she was okay. I stood up and told her I'd leave the house. I was going to leave it to her, lying to her by telling her I wanted her to be comfortable. The truth is, if she leaves, she'll end up being a burden on someone's sofa. I want her to finally learn what real adult life is like. She wants to keep spending as if she has no responsibilities because someone else took care of them for her. Well, I'm here to leave her with the rent and utilities, so she sees she can't always spend her money on Starbucks and other silly trendy things. I've left the house now, so she's going to have to be an adult whether she likes it or not. Hopefully the divorce will go well and she'll be awarded the place. At this rate, I don't see any other outcome. Time will tell. Update 2. Something very interesting happened. I'm glad I started this whole discourse on a throwaway account. Otherwise, things could get very interesting for me legally. I decided to do something to get back at Marion, and I must say it probably wasn't the best move, but one day I was upset and realized I hadn't really taught her a lesson, so I decided to do it. Just so you know, we're already divorced, and that's great. My lawyer had told me things don't always go as planned for the cheated spouse. With those expectations, I think I knew what to expect. We had to split my savings in half. She kept her car, and I kept mine, and then she was awarded the apartment. She could have gotten alimony, but we hadn't been married for very long, and it was determined she earned enough money compared to me, so I didn't need to give her any of mine. After the divorce, I decided to hit her where I knew it would hurt. She had a terrible time buying her last car, so she wanted to make sure she chose something that would really make her proud when she bought her current car. I went through the whole buying process with her, and in the end we got a car that had been serving her reliably to this day. It was a very cheap used car, but she didn't care much. She has terrible habits with her car. Sometimes she doesn't lock it when she comes home from work. Sometimes she leaves the key hidden inside, so she doesn't have to look for it all over the house, and she's not very good at keeping up with insurance either. So I took care of that for her. I was going to have someone steal her car. I told my friends, and they tried to dissuade me, but I told them I didn't care. I was going to make it happen, and I was going to make sure I didn't get caught. They said as long as I could deliver on the second part, it was a good way to get revenge, but they were afraid it wouldn't be that simple. The smart thing would have been to listen to them, but I only had revenge in mind and wanted to collect that debt. It wasn't difficult. I went to a dangerous area of the city at night. Obviously not a good idea, but I was protected, so I wasn't that scared. It's a place that has many vehicle skeletons, so I felt I would find the type of person I was looking for there. I gave a few bills to someone nearby and asked if he knew where I could find the right person. He went into one of the buildings, and minutes later a guy came out. He was surprisingly young. I told him what I needed and asked if he was willing. I gave him the model, he nodded. Then I gave him all the necessary information. He'd know where to go and where to find the keys. Everything else would be easy for him. I didn't even have to pay him because obviously he would profit greatly from it, but I still gave him something as an incentive. 3 days later, Marion called me. She was agitated. She asked me why I hadn't told her insurance had been canceled. I asked her why that was my responsibility. We were divorced, and she was an adult. She was supposed to keep track of those things on her own. She told me her car had been stolen and that the insurance said they couldn't cover it. I told her to file a police report, and she said she was going to, but apparently the recordings of the person who did it were terrible. She called me a day later telling me she had already filed the police report. At that point, I started to worry I had gotten into something worse than I wanted, that maybe I should have listened to my friends. Anxiety consumed me. However, this is what happened. Time passed, and nothing happened. It's been over a month, and that car hasn't appeared. The police gave her the professional opinion that it would probably have been dismantled by then, and that even if they found whoever did it, they might not be in a position to reimburse her anything. They said they would keep working, but that the chances of recovering it were bad. I wanted her to know it was me, but as much as I seek that satisfaction, I'm smarter than that. What makes me happiest is the fact that this woman was so financially irresponsible, and now she's left paying rent on her own, in addition to having to pay Ubers or save for another car. She's seeing what life's like when you can't spend your money as you want. Her fancy Instagram stories no longer appear as much, and when they do, she posts old things to make it seem like things are still happening in her life. It's pathetic. I already played my part in her life. She played her unfortunate part in mine, and I guess things are over now. Final update. Many people ask me how everything ended after the divorce. To be honest, I expected never to hear from Marian again, but when you live as recklessly as she does, the past always catches up to you. I found out the truth in the crudest way possible, with a subpoena from the prosecutor's office at my door. After I left her, Marian didn't change. On the contrary, without my salary to back her up, her need for money became dangerous. She drifted away from Ryan and started dating a much older man, an entrepreneur with businesses in the gray market. Marian thought she had found her new gold mine, but she didn't realize she was entering a world where the rules aren't set by law, but by dangerous people. This man was married to a woman who, unlike me, doesn't believe in lawyers or civil divorces. She pulls the family strings and wasn't going to let my ex get away with it, as she already suspected she was being cheated on. 3 months ago, Marian and her new lover were intercepted in a private parking lot. It wasn't an argument. It was a failed execution. 2 men sent by the wife burst in. The lover died in the driver's seat. Marian, in a panic, tried to jump out of the moving car to escape, but was hit by 2 shots, one in the shoulder and another that went through her lower back, directly impacting her spinal cord. The fall from the moving vehicle, added to the gunshots, was fatal for her mobility. The medical report the prosecutor's office showed me, because they initially tried to link me as a suspect due to the recent divorce, was devastating. Complete spinal cord transection. Marian survived, but now lives confined to a wheelchair for life with no sensation from the waist down. The tragedy didn't stop there. Ryan, upon learning Marian was involved with dangerous people and fearing they would come after him for having been her previous lover, tried to leave the state at full speed. He lost control on a wet road and crashed into a truck. He died before reaching the hospital. The saddest part was about my father-in-law. The man always had a weak heart, but seeing his daughter in a hospital bed, guarded by the police, and knowing she would never walk again was too much. He suffered a massive heart attack in the waiting room. He died 3 days later. How did I find out about all this? I had to testify to the police to prove my life is now completely unrelated to hers. The detective told me the cold details of the case. In addition, my mother-in-law called me distraught, begging me to help her with medical expenses because Marian has no insurance and the state won't cover a private clinic. Do you know what I did? I told her I was very sorry, but Marian had chosen that path the day she decided a handbag and a wad of cash were worth more than her integrity and her marriage. I hung up and blocked the number. Today, Marian is in a state rehabilitation center. There are no more Starbucks photos, no designer clothes, no luxuries. Only she remains. The sound of her wheelchair and the silence of a life she herself destroyed. Karma not only arrived, it ran over everyone. There's a very thin line between ambition and danger. Marian crossed it and paid the highest possible price. Do you think the protagonist did well to refuse to help his mother-in-law financially after the tragedy, or should he have had compassion? I'll read your comments.